Hello. Hello. Yeah, I'm sorry I started this live late. I'm tired, yo. I'm tired. I know I say that like literally every live, but I'm tired. Okay. Um, yes. So I'm working on my energy levels. As a matter of fact, I decided to just do a live because I knew trying to pre-record a video, edit, upload it was going to take too much energy that I do not have. So I was like, you know what? Let me just do a live. Let me just do it live. Like there's so much content I want to do, but because I'm like tired cuz I work, I help my clients, with their ancestry research amongst other things. I just don't have the energy, y'all, okay? I don't have the energy to do what I once did before. And I know it's crazy, right? I used to like do lives, like a whole work shift of me just talking, okay? For 8 hours. 6, 8 hours I'll be on live just talking and just doing what I do. But now, yeah, I have to plan stuff, y'all. Like I have to get my mind right and just make time, okay? And I think what I'm just gonna have to do is just get me a little energy drink, you know, some type of energy booster, and just start recording like early in the morning and go from there. Because it's it's a lot. It's a lot. And a lot of people don't know, but when you are in this type of work, you're constantly always getting attacked. And, that comes with the territory. But I have been doxxed before, okay? The natives doxed my previous address and threatened to do harm to my mom. So, being in this line of work can be very taxing and very draining. And of course, that happened years ago. So obviously it didn't stop me from doing what I do now, but it gets, you get worn down sometimes, just dealing with the craziness of it all. People don't really understand like what goes on behind closed doors because, you know, people like myself, we just handle things with grace and we just don't crash out, but it's still taxing. We don't want our loved ones to be getting threatened because we're telling people the truth about our ancestry. Sadly, it comes with the territory, but it it shouldn't be that way. And that actually goes right along with this video. Not natives, Black Americans claiming native ancestry are just trying to escape being black. So people push that narrative because they don't want us to look deeper inside of ourselves and research the answers on our own. They want us to be dependent on a narrative. And what people fail to realize is that a lot of the people that are categorized as black, because I don't necessarily like to say just straight out black people because so many people don't identify with that term. And also, too, it's a category that was placed upon people to subjugate them. And, of course, that can be easily said for people of other demographics, but being labeled as American Indian, white, Asian, whatever, those labels are nothing compared to the experience of what happens when you are labeled as black. Because there were folks that were Asian that are being categorized as white and getting the privileges that come with whiteness. But if you were called black, especially if you were not African to begin with, it definitely made your life harder. I don't care what anybody has to say. Like, there's so many people that I want to save face and want to be like, oh, black is the best thing ever, and oh, like my ancestors was proud to be called black and all this other stuff. But people forget that their ancestors had their own identities, and this is why on my channel I try to drill into people's head that before you were black, you were something else. Your ancestors had their own identity, they had their own culture. But so many people that don't even know their own ancestry, they want to cling on to Egypt or Kemet and be like, oh, well, they call themselves black and Kemet. Oh, but are you from there? Do you have relatives from over there? Do you have ancestors from over there? It's time to be logical. Because how is it that people who know that they have indigenous ancestry and can prove it are being called pretendians and illogical and self-hating, but the people claiming all these different ethnicities within the African continent ain't? And they have no proof to back it up either. It just doesn't make any sense. It really doesn't. It doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense to me how people want to dismiss history so much to the point where if they come across different information, they just have to deny it because they can't fathom a life outside of racial classifications. Hey, my loves. Hey. Hello, hello. So Trey says, you get hit with It Doesn't Matter. Oh, really? Why is America by John O'Gibley so expensive? Yeah, exactly. A lot of these books, these paintings are super expensive or they're not up for display. And it just makes you go, why isn't this up for display? Why is this painting is not up for display? But they have the lighter picture of this indigenous person on display. The same picture, but the one that is lighter is on display. But the real one in the back, where they are darker. And there's a lot of colorism when it comes to this topic, too. A lot of people want to dismiss colorism, but I'm not one of them. Because it's just no way that folks gonna sit here and say, oh, y'all just hate yourselves. Y'all don't want to clean to be black. And, Y'all want to be anything but niggas. And it's just like, let's be freaking for real. You know, like let's be for real. Because how are we being anything other than black when we originally didn't even identify that as in the first place? Like race wasn't like the whole white, black, colored, etc., etc. in the United States. That came into fruition after Bacon's rebellion. Now, of course, throughout, Latin America and the Caribbean and stuff like that, they had their divisions of class and race and color. Okay, but for the United States, it's different. They did not want indigenous people and the enslaved Africans rising up and going against the pale ones, the wealthy pale ones at that. So they put Negroes and Indians in the same category. I talk about this many times on my channel. Okay. So if you don't understand history, it's gonna be easy to manipulate you. Okay. I'm gonna see if I can screen share right quick. Give me a second, y'all. Let me read these comments right quick. Okay. People use tribes, but most tribes are whitewashed. Yeah, unfortunately, with all the mixing and stuff. But see, that's the thing. People want to forget that with these nations that a lot of us descend from, over time they became heavily mixed with Choctaw Nation. Choctaw Nation was formed by biracials. And I'm not attacking, biracial people or multiracial people, because I think oftentimes people um, think just because I'm of a mixed background, I'm just gonna be like, oh, well, like it is what it is, and oh, like mixed people are black people too, and da 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 da. Like no, like I'm no, mm-mm. Nope. There's no reason to be that way for me personally. It just ain't like, just because I come from a mixed race background doesn't mean I'm Ray Charles. And one thing I noticed, because I look racially ambiguous to a lot of people. They think that I'm just supposed to just be cool with all this foolishness. Why you hate white people? And all I'm saying is that so-called black people should have their own. You know, people are very whitewashed. And so when it comes to these nations, it makes sense because they're like, "Hey, you know, why you're not going with the status quo? Why are you over here not feeling some type of way? You know, why are you um not kissing pale people behind? I don't feel the need to do that. Like that's I don't feel the need to kiss people of a lighter hue behind. I don't care to do that. If anything, they always trying to attach themselves to me and what I got going on. Cause y'all hear that sound bite on TikTok that says when you're black, you're never really alone. Okay. And it's always someone of darker hue, trying to do a video or something cool, and a pale person walks into the camera frame and messing up their video and just being all nosy. Like that's real life. That's literally real life. So I don't feel the need to run behind them. They're gonna run behind me. They're gonna follow where I'm at. They're gonna see what I'm trying to do. Cause y'all know pale people are nosy. And a lot of biracials are like their pale parent. And quite frankly, that's why I'm not on this whole light skin biracial people are better because they're close to whiteness and all this other stuff. I just can't. Like I can't. I can't and I won't. People really don't know how deep the mentality goes. When people try to do the whole paper brown bag test with me, I don't get down with that. As soon as people start talking about light skin and all, I gotta go because I already know where that's gonna lead to, and that's gonna lead to a whole bunch of anti you melanated sayings and phrases that I'm not trying to be around. I like being brown skin. Okay, I'm already dreading winter because I know as soon as winter hit the corner, I'm gonna lose some color. Okay, because as brown skinned person, when we in the sun, we soak up. We get darker. When the sun starts to go down more, we start losing our color a little bit. So last winter, I like to done lost my mind looking at the pictures I took. I saw pictures of me, and I'm like, ain't no way I'm this light. It was upsetting me. Like honestly, y'all, I like being of darker hue. I like getting darker. I like being darker because I've like me personally. When my skin is lighter, I come across you melanated people or biracial people who are very anti you melanated people, and it's very triggering to me, and I don't like that. They'd be like, "Oh, you're my color," like I yeah, and they start saying all this anti you melanated stuff. Anyway, I just don't like it. I'm not dealing with that. But anyway, let me see if I can share this screen. Black people love talking about skin. They do. They really do. And it's I don't like that. I don't. I really don't. But let me show y'all about Bacon's Rebellion right quick, okay? So this is facinghistory.org, okay? Learn how Bacon's Rebellion became a turning point for the way the laws of colonial Virginia distinguished people of different races, okay? So in Virginia in the 1600s, Anthony Johnson secured his freedom from indentured servitude, acquired land, and became a respected member of his community. Elizabeth Key successfully appealed to the colony's legal system to set her free after she had been wrongfully enslaved. By the 1700s, the laws and customs of Virginia have begun to distinguish black people from white people, making it impossible for most Virginians of African descent to do what Johnson and Key had done. So, already off the rip, we already know, especially during these times, they were not trying to get rid of that free labor that people of African descent and American Indian descent were providing. Okay. And there is a time in history where it was illegal to enslave American Indians, but however, we know how paper genocide comes into play. Okay. They're like, you know what? You said we can't enslave the Indians, but we're gonna find a way to do that. So don't even worry about it. Like, yeah, you can write your little rule or whatever, but who's going to enforce it? And that's exactly what happened. They found a loophole by reclassifying them as Negro or colored. Okay. So furthermore, it says, why did Virginia lawmakers make these changes? Many historians point to an event known as Bacon's Rebellion in 1676 as a turning point. Nathaniel Bacon was a wealthy property owner and relative of Virginia's governor, William Berkeley. But Bacon and Berkeley did not like each other, and they disagreed over issues pertaining to how the colony should be governed, including the colony's policies towards American Indians. Sorry, y'all, I had to sneeze. Um, yeah, so Bacon wanted the colony to retaliate for raids by American Indians on the frontier settlements and to remove all indigenous people from the colony so landowners like himself could expand their property. Berkeley feared that doing so would unite all of the nearby tribes in a costly and destructive war against the colony. Okay. In defiance of the governor, Bacon organized his own militia consisting of white and black indentured servants and enslaved black people who joined in exchange for freedom and attacked nearby tribal nations. A power struggle ensued with Bacon and his militia on one side and Berkeley, the Virginia House of Burgess, and the rest of the colony's elite on the other. Months of conflict followed, including armed skirmishes between militias. In September 1676, Bacon's militia captured Jamestown and burned it to the ground. Okay? They weren't playing. Although Bacon died of fever a month later and the rebellion fell apart, Virginia's wealthy planters were shaken by the fact that a rebel militia that united white and black servants and slaves had destroyed the colonial capital. Legal scholar Michelle Alexander writes, the events in Jamestown were alarming to the planter elite, who were deeply fearful of the multiracial alliance of indentured servants and slaves. Word of Bacon's rebellion spread far and wide, and several more uprisings of a similar type followed. In an effort to protect their superior status and economic position, the planters shifted their strategy for maintaining dominance. They abandoned their heavy reliance on indentured servants in favor of the importation of more black slaves. So, after Bacon's rebellion, Virginia lawmakers began to make legal distinctions between white and black inhabitants by permanently enslaving Virginians of African descent and giving poor white indentured servants of farmers some new rights and status. They hoped to separate the two groups and make it less likely they would unite again in rebellion. Historian Ira Berlin explains, soon after Bacon's rebellion, they increasingly distinguished between people of African descent and people of European descent. They enact laws that say that people of African descent are hereditarily slaves, and they increasingly give some power to independent white farmers and landholders. And see, this is why I'm gonna stop right here, because I'm not stopping completely, but I'm gonna make a little note. This is why I don't care for unities between the coloreds and the whites. Because still to this day, people want to be like, I don't see color. We should all unite and come together. The blacks and the whites and the Mexicans and the Indians and everybody else should just come. I don't believe that. Not a second. I don't believe it nor care for it. Because this is literally telling you they increasingly gave some power to independent white farmers and landholders. Okay? And guess what? Y'all already know the outcome. It hold off on the unity that these groups were having with each other. Okay? So, if all they had to do was give these people some power, the white farmers, the independent white farmers, some power, and landholders, to keep them from joining with non-whites, then obviously there was never no unity. It was never any unity. These people knew what people wanted, and yet this is what they did. This is what they did. They knew that, hey, we can sell some pipe dreams to pale people, who are lower than us, and continue to oppress, you melanated people. And we're in the clear. And it's been like that for centuries. So anyway, I'm going to continue. Okay. Now what is interesting about this is that we normally say that slavery and freedom are opposite things, that they are diametrically opposed. But what we see here in Virginia in the late 17th century around Bacon's Rebellion is that freedom and slavery are created at the same moment. Freedom for who? Freedom for who? Anyway, let me just move on because I'm gonna be here all day with this. According to the Oxford English Dictionary, the first appearance in print of the adjective white in reference to a white man, a person of race distinguished by a light complexion, was in 1671. Colonial charters and other official documents written in the 1600s and early 1700s rarely referred to European colonists as white. So please keep this in mind, okay? As the status of people of African descent in the British colonies was challenged and attacked, and as white indentured servants were given new rights and status, the word white continued to be more widely used in public documents and private papers to describe the European colonists. people of European descent were considered white, and those of African descent were labeled black. So, Robin D.G. Kelly, the historian, explains many of the European descendant poor whites began to identify themselves, if not directly, with the rich whites, certainly with being white. And here you get the emergence of this idea of a white race as a way to distinguish themselves from those dark skinned people who they associate with perpetual slavery. So, yeah, that explains it. I mean, this is one of the, earliest references in the United States, well, modern day United States, about the difference between black and white. But like I mentioned before, also with this event as well, I don't know if y'all guys remember about um that meme that said like Native Americans, Africans were joined into one category. And I remember seeing a lot of pushback and seeing people say, "Oh, that's not true." Like it's totally something different, but actually it is true. Okay, so after Bacon's Rebellion, and here's the source for this as well. I actually put this in one of my videos, but anyway, um, so yes, November 1682, Act 1, and Act 2 repeal a formal law making Indians and others free. Two acts passed in November of 1682 joined Native Americans and Africans into one racial category, Negroes and other slaves. And this is on virtualjamestown.org/laws1 if you're interested in looking into this further. So it says here, and I quote, "And be it further enacted by the authority aforesaid, that all servants except Turks and Moors, whilst in amenity with his majesty, which from and after publication of this act shall be brought or imported into this country either by sea or land, whether Negroes, Moors, mulattoes, or Indians, who and whose parentage and native country are not Christian at the time of their first purchase of such servant by some Christian, although afterwards and before such their importation and bringing into this country, they shall be converted to the Christian faith, and all Indians which shall hereafter be sold by our neighboring Indians, or any other trafficking with us, as for slaves, are hereby adjudged, deemed and taken to be slaves to all intents and purposes, any law, usage, or custom to the contrary notwithstanding." So yeah, y'all know I don't speak that what they were speaking back then, but y'all get the point, okay? And here's another act that is also interrelation to this as well. Um, the November 1682 Act, the second, an act declaring Indian women servants titulables, okay? Whereas it hath been doubted whether Indian women servants sold to English above the age of 16 years be titleable. Be it enacted and declared, and it is hereby enacted and declared by the governor, council, and burgess of this General Assembly and the authority thereof, that all Indian women are and shall be titleables and ought to pay leaves. I don't know how to pronounce that word. In like manner as Negro women brought into this country though and ought to pay. So yes. So it's true. It's true. They did put Africans and American Indians into one racial category, Negroes and other slaves. So unfortunate, but this is where we are. Okay. So when people be like, "Oh, Black Americans just claiming to be Native because they hate themselves and they just don't want to be Black and blah 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 blah," no, no, because there are forces in play to keep people from identifying from who they truly are. And I'm not one of the content creators that don't feel like there wasn't any Africans that were over here. I just, in my honest perspective of expertise, it just wasn't a high number like they make it out to be. It wasn't no millions and millions that came to the United States. It like people inflate those numbers because they know a lot of people don't read, and when they hear 10 million, they're like, oh yeah, that they for some reason people think that 10 million came to the United States, and that no, because on paper they said 3 to 4 million went to Brazil, and that's literally like the majority of them. So everybody else was just divided. Okay, so that's just going off on their paperwork, what they be saying. So, but it wasn't no millions on millions on millions in the United States. I know. Um, so there's other key points I want to talk about as well. So one thing that people forget is that not only paper genocide come into play, but also too, like, there are um people with African ancestry that have ties to American Indian communities, and it's not fair to them to have to pick a side when like, honestly, let's just be for real. A lot of people who are labeled and seen as black have mixed ancestry. Even though people may see me as black, they will still tell me that I look racially ambiguous, that I'm not all the way black. And my favorite, that I'm not, like how they say, I'm not like the other blacks or whatever that means. So people know that a lot of so-called black people have mixed ancestry. They're not fully African or even African to begin with. Because as some of y'all may know, um, people come to me up asking me if I speak Spanish, or um, talk about me being Mexican or whatever. Okay. I told you about that time someone called me a native Mexican pretending to be black. But the kicker is, I don't claim it. I don't claim that title as my own. And if I do, it's because I'm not trying to argue with someone about racial classifications. Because sometimes you'll spend a whole day arguing with somebody or just going back and forth about racial classifications. And I'm just not going to do that. And at this point, so many indigenous people were and still are classified as black. So I'm just not going to argue about it. If you think I'm black, cool, whatever. I have indigenous ancestors who were labeled as such. So all you doing is confirming what has happened. to get anybody from Africa was expensive. Exactly. So I don't know, like people make it sound like it was just billions of billions, and it's not no billions. The transatlantic slave trade is a business. It's a business. Them folks was making insurance claims on any lost cargo. Okay? It actually reminds me of that movie Belle. I think that's the name of it. Where that biracial woman um ended up being with that white man. And I remember in the movie they was talking about how they did something to the slaves, and then they took out some insurance claims, and it ended up being like insurance fraud or something. I'm pretty sure that happened often too. So honestly, them folks was doing all types of just scandalous criminal activity. So it honestly, the way people try to be so narrow about it, I'm like, there's so much to like the story that people don't know. So, but anyway, back to what I was saying. So there are people that have mixed ancestry. So it's not fair to them to feel like they have to pick an ancestor to love and respect. Because honestly, when I was making that video about, let me see, I forgot the name of it. I forgot the name. Let me look at it again. I gotta see the title one more time. Oh, okay. The Untold Stories of American Indian Heritage Among Black Americans. At the end of that video, you see that woman. I think her name was like Misty or something. And she was talking about how, she didn't want to claim a certain heritage or something like that. I can't fully remember verbatim. But her grandmother said, well, which one of your grandmothers um, that you don't love or something like that? She was like, which one of them is unworthy to claim? And she was like, what? And honestly, that changed my whole perspective because I'm like, wow, like that made me think twice. I'm like, wait a minute. I never thought of it as a way of me thinking of, these people I descend from and be like, you're not worthy. You're not worthy of me to claim you. Because literally, I descend from them. Like the reason I'm even here today is because they decided to do things differently and do what they wanted to do, or whatever. So I'm like, you know what? I could get jiggy with that. I can accept that. I don't like, honestly, for mixed race people, we are told that we have to accept what is in front of us. And I just don't think that's true. I think that we should accept who we are, accept the lineages we come from. Because, okay, we're not full blooded anything. So what? We still alive. We still bleed red. Okay, like, I mean, we still people, so so like I'm just not gonna be ashamed about who I am, who I descend from. I remember a point of time where I did not want to claim my white ancestors at all. I was not trying to claim them French people. I'm like, no, I don't know what y'all talking about. And people be in my comment section saying, but you mix, you mix, you mix. I'm like, no, I won't hurt it. I ain't found no documentation, so I ain't gonna claim it. Y'all, I found that documentation. I'm like, you know what? It is what it is. It is what it is. I'm not even gonna be mad at that anymore. I'm not gonna be like, oh my God, I don't wanna be related to colonizers, blah, 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 because it is what it is. I'm already here. So why get mad? Why throw a temper tantrum? Why feel ashamed about something I'm already am? Okay? People want us to feel bad about our ancestry, and like honestly, I'm just not going for that. You can feel any type of way. I don't care. But I tell you what, I'm not gonna feel bad about something I am. Like, go to hell. Go to hell, go to jail, go anywhere. But in my face, quite frankly, the reason why I love genealogy and doing it so much is because I learned to accept myself. And, I have clients that, they find out information and they're like, oh, I don't like that. uh, you know, I don't want to accept that. Or, oh, I'm related to a pale person and I don't like that. And I'm just like, well, it is what it is, sweetie. I know, we think like, oh, I want to change the past. I hate this. I wish I can, go back in time and do something different. And it's easy to feel that way. But your ancestor did something different. They did not hook up with someone of their own background. And they decided to create a child with someone else. And it's subjective because, it could have been a force or even out of love. But either way it go, you're here. There's a lot of generational trauma to unpack. A lot of generational trauma to unpack. And a lot of people have not unpacked it because, they feel ashamed. They feel ashamed of their roots and, what and where they descend from. And I get it, it's understandable. I feel you. But you shouldn't feel ashamed for who you are. It's not your fault. It's not. It's really not. So, if you find, you know, um, different ancestry in your family tree, just accept it. If it's, truly you descend from that line, accept it. There's no point in hating yourself and being resentful of who you descend from. No point in doing that. Because why make yourself suffer for other people's choices? I don't understand that. I'm not making myself suffer. I'm not going to belittle myself because of what an ancestor chose to do. They chose to do that and they did that. So I'm not finna make myself feel bad about something I can't control. If need be, I can just, light a candle for them and just, hope for the best for them. Our ancestors need our love and support. it's really up to us to break these generational traumas. But I tell you what, it's not going to work if you feel shame, disgust, and disgrace. And I mean, it's normal to feel that way. It's normal to feel that way if you find out you descend from a pale person. You're like, "Ah, I'm disgusted," because more than likely you're gonna think it comes from slavery, and whether it comes from slavery or not, you may feel some type of way, and that's completely normal. But don't ever hate yourself, okay? And even if you do have African ancestry, like, okay, ain't nothing wrong with that. Ain't nothing wrong with having African ancestry, except who you are. Don't let other people tell you, now you have to claim this, and you ain't gotta do nothing that they want you to do. I'm gonna tell you that right now. Because people always gonna have something to say. But it's up to you to be like, you know what, nah, I'm not feeling that. You ain't gonna sit here and tell me what I should and should not do. Do what's best for you. Okay. Don't sit there and be shamed for who you descend from, because that's just you. You are unique. You descended from those people for a reason. I feel like everything happens for a reason. Okay. If someone was to hit me on my leg and be like, oh, was that happen for a reason? I'm like, yeah, you hit me on my leg because you was trying to prove something. That's the reason right there. Shoot. I'm just saying. Don't let folks make you feel some type of way. Because if you do, they win. Yep. They were throwing them overboard and collecting insurance without bringing anything. Yep. Which is sad, because that's people at the end of the day. When we like, oftentimes when people talk about this subject, they are so desensitized. They're like, oh yeah, like they just did what they did, and it's like, yeah, they did what they did, but it don't it's not better when we talk about it. So they still people at the end of the day. They still people at the end of the day, and it's sad. Yeah, that's why I say a lot of candle for the ancestors. If you do have African ancestry, it's okay to own it. It's okay to claim it. I'm not one of those channels that gotta be like, oh, you have to claim this. Like, you ain't gotta do nothing you don't want to do. The hell? And that's what gets me. Like, a lot of these channels, a lot of these people are so headstrong and want folks to just do stuff a certain way. Like, they just have to. And it's like, you don't have to do nothing you're not comfortable with. Period. Okay? Now, there are certain procedures and rules when it comes to genealogy, but other than that, when it comes to your ancestry and showing up for yourself and your ancestors, that's tailored to you. That's for your experience. Everybody heritage ain't the same. Okay? And they're probably like, what you typing over there? I'm trying to make this cover because I forgot to make the cover for this this video. But yeah, that's one of the things I wanted to talk about because people get on my nerves. I'm just tired of this freaking this narrative that people always trying to push around, like, and quite frankly, I'm so tired of people saying we're not African. No, you're not African, and that's okay. Like, stop trying to speak for everybody. You are not everybody, okay? And that's the problem. Like, y'all don't know everybody ancestry. Y'all don't know everybody heritage to say the things that a lot of y'all be saying. As a genealogist, I would never go to someone and be like, "You're indigenous. You have to claim to be indigenous. You're not African, so don't claim that." You know why I won't do that? Because I don't know. Like, let's have some nuance here. Let me tell y'all something. People don't like my channel because I speak with nuance. A lot of people lack nuance, and that's why everything I talk about be pissing them off because they lack depth in their mind. They can't fathom anything outside of their perspective. And quite frankly, that thing can be pissing me off. It really do. It be getting on my last nerve. No nuance, Nelly. Okay, you are not the only person in the world, Craig. You can't be speaking for everybody because you're not everybody. You are not everybody to be saying what you be saying. Hold on. My alarm going off on my phone because I was only gonna do this for an hour because I'm gonna hop on this what they call it? My mini stepper, because I'm trying to burn some cannabis. Hold on, let me go get this phone right quick. Hold on, y'all. Hold on. Okay, I'm back. I'm back. Hold on, let me close the door. Okay, I'm back for real this time. Okay. So, I'm gonna be on here about 20 more minutes because I really want to get this workout on, and I gotta go in the shower and all that other stuff. So, all right. Now where I'm at, okay. So again, like I was ranting about, like, people just need to get some damn nuance, okay? And I usually don't be cussing like this, but it just gets on my nerves, okay? We don't just cause someone has you melanin like you doesn't mean they have the same heritage as you. You don't know them folks from a can of paint. As a genealogist, I would never, ever, 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 ever get a potential client and be like, oh, you're indigenous and I could find documentation. Because what if I can't? What if there ain't no documents? Can't be like, honestly, when it comes to genealogy, you just have to put in the work and hope for the best. You got to look for them documents and look for answers. And a lot of times you may not get no answers. So I don't be promising nothing. I'm like, I'll look, but I can't promise you you're not African, you're not indigenous, you're not this, and you're not that. Because I don't know. I'm not going to be making promises when I have not put in the work yet. So let's have some nuance here. Can't be telling folks where they come from because nowadays we getting Africans that are claiming the Black American status or absorbing themselves into the Black American demographic. I mean, which is nothing new, but still. So you could be talking to someone that you think you share a racial background with, but they actually from overseas. They actually from over there. And even though there's Africans that would downplay the culture, they will still imitate and emulate the culture. So you have to watch out who you calling brother and sister. Because they may be from overseas and playing. But anyway, let me get to some of my points. Because if I don't, I'm going to be here all day. Ranting and raving and hollering and hooting. Okay. Where am I at? Yeah. So, it's a cultural legacy that people are forgetting. With colonization, paper genocide, assimilation, all those things will put into place to erase our history and our legacies. So, if you are labeled as Black and your ancestors are labeled as such, when your ancestors had indigenous ancestry, that's more than enough said. They, and when I say they, I'm talking about the evil, pale elites purposely put our ancestors in that category to erase their existence, to erase their legacy. There were nations that were quote unquote wiped out when in reality their descendants or they themselves were labeled as Black, colored, Negro. They didn't go extinct, they were reclassified. They were enslaved and shipped somewhere else. Or they got the hell up out of Dodge and probably accepted the black title so they wouldn't get unalived. People don't understand how harsh the laws and these rules were. I know for Pokanoke Nation, if they were to call themselves after their nation or claim it, they would be unalived. Okay? And that ain't no threat. It was a promise and a result that happened. I think people are very desensitized to the trauma around that statement alone. Imagine being unalived for just simply stating who you are and who you descend from. It doesn't make sense, but it happened. And I'm saying it doesn't make sense because that alone is not a basis to unalive someone. But yet, in these colonizers' head, it was because they were greedy and they wanted the land. They wanted to strip indigenous people of their rights, not just of their land, but of their rights, their God given human rights. So, yeah, people that are categorized as Black that have indigenous ancestry have every right to reclaim their indigenous heritage. They have every right to reconnect with their indigenous heritage. And the fact that there's so many Black indigenous people labeled as Black with indigenous roots that have contributed great contributions to history, that have made great inventions, that were successful. They are being written out of history. And if they are written into history, somehow their indigenous ancestry is left out. People talk about Rosa Parks, but they don't even know this woman is of Creek ancestry. People talk about George Crumb, but they don't even know he has indigenous ancestry. People talk about Bessie Coleman and don't even know that she has indigenous ancestry too. There are so many so-called Black heroes and leaders with indigenous ancestry. And people overlook that. They don't want to talk about it. And I think that's crazy. And what's even crazier is when you do mention, like, oh, this person is from this nation. And then all of a sudden, people want to act like it's an attack on Africans. Like, oh no, they can't be that. And they Black, they the only Black, the one drop rule. And they just start going on a rant about this damn one drop rule. And it's like, how simple can you be mentally? Because anybody with a brain knows that the one drop rule was used to subjugate and oppress people who were seen and labeled as black or Negro. And anybody that had a drop of quote unquote Negro blood was to be oppressed and subjugated. Like let's be for real. Let's be for real, y'all. I'm so tired of people using the one drop rule as a basis to ignore people true ancestry. And also, let's talk about the issue of validity in documentation too. Many people of the Black demographic struggle to verify their indigenous ancestry due to poor record keeping, forced assimilation, and name changes imposed by colonizers. However, this doesn't make their heritage less real, just harder to document and trace. The paper trail in America is everything. And the higher ups know that. They know that, hey, you want reparations? You want your land back? We need to see that paperwork. Oh, but we made it hard. We purposely reclassified or misidentified your ancestor. Oops. Looks like you're not going to get anything because you can't really prove it. I beg your pardon. I beg your finest pardon. And we can't forget about the Dawes Rolls. The U.S. government's official record of tribal citizens from the late 1800s, and how it excluded many darker skinned American Indians and quote unquote Black Indians, making it difficult for the descendants to prove their heritage. There were full blooded indigenous people being classified as freedmen. And of course, American Indians with African ancestry or imposed Black ancestry, meaning that they may not have African ancestry, but because they were reclassified or someone close to them was classified as Black as such, they were recorded as freedmen too, rather than full tribal members. So we can't forget about that. Paper genocide and in these laws, like the Racial Integrity Act, the one drop rule, blood quantum, and all these other laws that were used to hinder people of the Black demographic, it was never about celebrating African heritage. And honestly, I think that's what people are getting a disconnect, because there's so many people that view the one drop rule as a rites of passage, as a way to celebrate African heritage, and it's just not. You can't tell me that the one drop rule is used to celebrate African heritage when it literally kept people from voting, from being seen as human, from being treated as people. And also, let's talk about this too. Let's talk about how claiming indigenous ancestry is a reaction to the intense racism people of the Black demographic face. Because there's already a lot of us that feel conflicted about the quote unquote black identity or the black experience due to societal pressures. But it's also unfair to assume all claims of indigenous heritage stem from a desire to escape blackness. That is literally racism people are trying to perpetrate onto us. And even if you do have African ancestry and indigenous ancestry, you have the right to take pride in both of your heritage. Recognizing your indigenous roots doesn't diminish your African identity either. It gives you a full look into the understanding of your full ancestry. Okay? And, a lot of people think that we're claiming these mixed race pale natives, but people forget that they're claiming us. A lot of these folks get their tribal identification from us. Let's just keep it a buck. Let's just keep it honest. Let's just be honest. Let's just be real. You ain't got no. Let me stop. No, but for real though, for real. Okay, because there's also a lot of anti-black racism in indigenous communities, and because of how they criminalized people who are labeled as black, the nations that we also descend from try to separate themselves from us as well due to that. And that ain't our fault. People act like being labeled as black is of our own wrongdoing. No, it ain't my fault. I naturally look like this. The hell? I'm not apologizing because of my indigenous features. The hell? Okay. Then sit there and got these heavily mixed race people on their high horse, excluding black Indians or people who are categorized as black with indigenous ancestry from tribal citizenship, even though they were promised rights in post Civil War treaties. But people don't want to talk about that. People always want to talk about reparations and restitutions, but what about you melanated indigenous people who are owed these rights and these resources that were supposed to be given? It just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense how people try to flip it and be like, "Oh, well, they don't owe you nothing." Okay, but the treaty say something different. Let's be for real. We already know the Treaty of Dancing, Rabbit Creek or Creek Rabbit, whichever one. Like let's not be dense here, okay? Because a lot of these pale natives want to be like, "Oh, you just hate yourself. You're just hiding from the fact that you're African." Well, you're hiding from the fact that you're a white person. Helpful? Shoot. How you gonna sit here and try to talk about somebody's identity when you have a whole white parent? You have a white parent and grandparents, if not on both sides. Who are you to gatekeep indigenous identity when you're not even full blooded yourself? That just don't make no damn sense. You can't sit here and tell folks what they can and cannot identify as when you over here looking like a whole pale colonizer. Okay? The myth of escaping blackness is a form of erasure. I'm going to say it one more time. The myth of escaping blackness is a form of erasure. Because mixed people exist. Okay? And this myth that escaping blackness erases the very real existence of people who are both black and native, or should I say, black and indigenous, African indigenous, whatever. Okay? By trying to say that black Americans are just trying to escape being black, it ignores their right to embrace all aspects of their identity. And I'm not going for that. I'm just not. You literally get 50% of your DNA from each parent. So if your parent is a pale European person and the other parent is, for example, African or something, that's a mixture, baby. You got 50% from each side. Okay? And that's just science. That's science. That has been scientifically proven. So it just doesn't make any sense how people want to ignore science. They always want to talk about DNA ancestry tests, but when we start pulling up these receipts that actually mean something, then folks don't want to look at science no more. When you start pulling out studies and other documentation and stuff like that, then folks get real quiet and try to change subject. Now don't try to change subject now. You know what you're doing. Shoot. The assumption that black people claiming native ancestry are trying to escape being black perpetrates harmful stereotypes about black identity being something to avoid. It also fails to recognize the diverse and fruitful history of people of the black demographic, which, hello, often includes indigenous influences. And I'm saying people of the black demographic because not every person who was and is labeled as black is actually African. Hold on, I gotta sneeze. Okay. Um, dang, I lost my train of thought. Okay, where was I at? So, okay, why I say what I do? Okay, so just because someone was labeled as black doesn't necessarily mean they were black or Negro or colored. They could have came from a whole different demographic landmass other than Africa. But because of what they look like, they were categorized as such. So I say this so people can keep this in mind. There were Asians being labeled as black, Aboriginal Americans being labeled as black, and pretty much anybody who was dark skinned or that had proximity to what they identify as blackness. So people don't really understand the complexity of racial categories. It was never really about genetics, it was about control. It was always about controlling the narrative, controlling the people, controlling their decisions and what they do. These people knew that if they could classify people as black, they could continue to enslave them. Okay, going back to this article. They knew that they could have a lifetime of slaves and indentured servants if they could put the Negro or black label on them. And it's not just Africans, it's indigenous people too. Pretty much anybody that they wanted to. The poor whites got off a little easier, but they didn't get away completely because they still poor. So they did what they had to do to make sure that slave labor was coming in. And it's shameful. And it breaks my heart trying to research people who have enslaved ancestors because the information can be so limiting. And it sucks when you can't yield much results because of the poor record keeping that these folks did on enslaved individuals. It's disgusting. They did not see them as human. So they was like, why should I write paperwork on them? Being humans being seen as property is real when you gotta look at those deeds, those property taxes, and everything else that come with it. So that's all I have to say about this video because I'm about to hop on this mini step and burn these calories. Okay. But yes, I will be talking about this more on my Patreon in depth. So I would definitely suggest y'all guys to join my Patreon if you haven't already, because I will be putting up another video about this topic, going deeper into detail, and just letting it all out there, okay? Because on YouTube, I have to censor myself or I get demonetized or shadow banned or whatever. So I have to limit the words that I say. But on my Patreon, Y'all know it's free game over there. Okay, so I say what I need to say. So I will be continuing this conversation tomorrow on my Patreon. So if you're a Patreon member, mark your calendar because yeah, you already know. So anyway, thank y'all guys for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Like this video, share, and y'all guys, please stay safe. Please stay safe. Hug your loved ones and tell them that you love them. Because this subject weighs so heavy on me because so many of our elders and ancestors couldn't live in their truth. So just show them some love, okay? So I love y'all guys. See you in the next one.